We want to discuss Dak.
Yeah.
The big money. So we're talking about Dak Prescott being a $30 million a year quarterback. And again, this is completely in a vacuum. I do think when you're talking quarterback contracts, the idea of front-loading them, I think can make a lot of sense depending on the situation. Or a Derek Carr situation where he made a ton of money from the Raiders, but the Raiders have some pretty good outs there. If they need to move on, I think Dak has to be in that boat.
This is a perfect opportunity to pitch your appeal for the NFL to create a middle class of quarterbacks.
Yeah,
so throw it out there.
So we did a whole...
Give me your idea.
Well, it's impossible to do because it essentially would take collusion. And we know that the NFL owners are well above colluding.
Of course.
So we did a whole video on it a few weeks back because Eric and George did a breakdown and you know, Chris has been coming in here in the office and he's like, I need answers here. Like, who do you pay? Who do you not pay? What's going on? We essentially came to the conclusion when you have a top 8 to 10 quarterback, it truly is a game changer. It's not a generic cutoff, but when you have guys in that top 10 range, whether it's Brady, Breeze, Rodgers, Mahomes now, Rivers is probably in that boat. Big Ben, Matt Ryan. I like the Matt Ryan rule. Somebody stealing this from somebody. If your quarterback's worse than Matt Ryan, you can keep looking.
Okay.
If you have Matt Ryan or better, you can win.
Do you think we're all
more consistently?
Do you think we're all agreed that Dak Prescott is worse than Matt Ryan?
I am in complete agreement.
I am. But
yes.
do you think?
Well, I don't think everybody's in agreement.
Worldwide, landscape-wise, we're all agreed on that?
No, because
we probably should.
Because I've seen people cite stuff like since 2016, best quarterback record in the NFL, Tom Brady, of course, and then Dak. I'm just giving you the arguments. Dak Prescott's number 2, I believe.
Right, but if the argument is wins, go away. If the argument is wins,
I mean,
we
over
can't
time it's going to even off, but in a 3-year sample, of course not. So Dak, he wins, right? There's the running component that he brings to the table. I do think that is valuable, right? You can use him in the red zone. There's something to that. I think Dak he's at best the 15th best quarterback in the NFL. He's in that 15 to 22 range.
I'm just saying there's a level of people that you can't talk to, right?
Yeah, I know.
So if the argument coming back at you is QB wins, we can't have a conversation.
Right. So there's this cutoff with the top 8 to 10. I think Baker's in that mix now.
Yeah.
Mahomes is in that mix now.
It's getting more crowded.
It's more crowded. But so we'll say it's top 10. If you have a top 10 quarterback, you build around him. Once you're at 11 through 25, there's a certain level of interchangeable with those guys. They have different skill sets. They're not the exact same player, but you're talking about Matthew Stafford. I think you're talking about Cam Newton. There was a lot of talk about Cam Newton over the weekend about his Hall of Fame credentials and all these different things.
Hall of Fame?
Well, because when you stack up counting stats like passing yards and rushing touchdowns and different things like that, his rushing ability is extremely valuable. But using our grades, he's really had 1 year where he's been elite or close to it, that MVP season. Maybe one other year where I think he cracked the top 10 in our grades and has mostly been in the 15 to 20 range. And this is, forget, his situation hasn't always been great in Carolina and all that stuff. I don't think they've built around him all that well. But still, I think Cam is in that next tier of quarterback. And I'm very broad tiers here. I'm putting Brady and Rivers in the same tier for a minute here. Top 10 or the next 15. The next 15 includes, you have the
next
quarterbacks.
Cousins,
it's Kirk Cousins. Andy Dalton's at the bottom end of it. Stafford's
Carr.
there. Newton's there. Carr's there. Dak's there.
Jameis.
Right? Honestly, Carson Wentz is still there right now.
Yeah, probably.
Carson Wentz could crack the top 10. I think he's got a better shot than, say, Goff or Dak at this point to truly crack the top 10 more consistently. But if you look at their careers, Wentz, Goff, and Dak, very similar from a throw-for-throw basis. All that said, when you're in that next tier, how hard is it to get somebody in that tier is the question. So the next time there's a draft and Dwayne Haskins comes out, or Kyler Murray, of course, we said we think could be in that top 10 range. Mm-hmm. Is it that tough to move on from Dak Prescott for, say, a Dwayne Haskins? That would be the question, right? When do you move on to the rookie contract quarterback? And there's just a lot at play here. If you give Dak $30 million a year, I know you'll keep getting more contracts on top of that, so it won't look as bad over time.
Right.
But I don't think Dak's worth that type of money.
The salary cap keeps going up, so $30 million is it's the new $20 million. But
It's
the
just
percentage of the quarterback is chewing up is staying the same. It's just that the numbers keep getting bigger.
It's just so risky.
So it used to be like, I think, a binary thing, which is you either have a quarterback or you don't. And if you don't have a quarterback, you need one, so you have to throw whatever it takes to get at. And then it's just a case of where you draw the line.
Right.
Like, is this guy actually a quarterback or not? And I think, who broke the system?
Who's that?
Alex Smith. The contract that Alex Smith got in Kansas City, where it was, I know that you're Alex Smith and you're not actually that good, but I think you're just good enough that we can win with you. And if we don't have you, we get the last few years, which was a disaster. So we have to give you the $100 million quarterback contract.
He wins everywhere he goes.
Right. So he got the $100 million deal, and that created this binary situation where if you're above this line, you get $100 million, and if you're below this line, you get cast away to be a backup forever.
I mean, Flacco broke it too.
No, well, so Flacco did, but he for a different reason, right? Flacco got the deal because of a 4-game stretch where it looked like he was better than that. Now, they just miscalculated what Flacco was.
There was also just, here's a reward for what you did,
right?
Rather than here's what you're going to do.
So you can look at it that way, that you got a reward for the game that brought us the Super Bowl. Or you can look at it if this 4-game stretch was legitimately elite quarterback play. We think you can be this guy going forward. You've won the Super Bowl now.
Yeah.
Turn us into the Patriots. And it didn't happen.
Real quick, let me say...
hang on. So the Flacco deal, I think, was different because they just miscalculated what Flacco was. And then Flacco went back to being Joe Flacco, and it was just a bad deal. The Chiefs' Alex Smith contract was different because they knew exactly what Alex Smith was and determined that giving him $100 million was better than not giving him $100 million because he wasn't worth it and being stuck in quarterback hell.
Well, so that's a part of it, too, because if you look at the Chiefs' quarterback hell, we're talking about the Brody Core,
right.
Coyles.
Yes.
Coyles? Brody Croyle. Brody Croyles of the world. Tyler Palko was starting games in 2011. Tyler Thigpen's. I mean, we're talking. Part of it comes from where did you come from?
Right.
If you had literally the worst quarterback situation or two in the NFL, Alex Smith looks like Super Bowl heaven, right?
Like a $100 million quarterback.
So just to be clear on all this stuff, a top 10 quarter, nothing guarantees anything. Anytime we're discussing any of this stuff, there's nuance to it. It's just playing the percentages, right? Phillip Rivers has had bad years and losing seasons and all that stuff. Matt Ryan has had losing seasons. So having a top 10 quarterback doesn't guarantee anything. Mm-hmm. It just gives you a higher percentage chance of winning year in, year out, making it to the playoffs year in, year out. But at the same time, having a Kirk Cousins, a Matthew Stafford, a Dak Prescott, you can have good years with all these guys. It's just harder. It's just harder because they're not going to carry guys as much. And I think this next tier of quarterback, 11 through 25, call it, has so much dependency on their supporting cast. And real quick, Cam Newton's MVP season in 2015, even though the supporting cast on paper didn't look great, that was a year where they got a better supporting cast for his skill sets. They ran him a little bit more. They played to his skill set as well, and he had the MVP season. There is dependency more in that tier on your supporting cast.
Yeah. So where I was going with all that is it used to be this binary system of yes or no, you have a quarterback. Now I think you're looking at least 3, probably 4 or 5 tiers that all factor into the money you should give the guy, right? Dream scenario is you find rookie deal quarterback who's amazing. Patrick Mahomes, right?
Or
now
Russell
all of a sudden,
Wilson, 2012 through whatever.
Now all of a sudden you have a Super Bowl window because you have no money tied up in the most important position in the game who's playing at an all-pro level.
Baker
and
Mayfield,
you just have an advantage over everybody else. Right. Look what the Browns have been able to do just in the last 12 months because they have Baker Mayfield tied down to a modest contract and suddenly have all the money in the world to throw at everything.
Yeah. More
so if they acquire Gerald McCoy. So that's dream scenario, right? The next best is just having the great quarterback, regardless of what you have to pay him. So having a Tom Brady, bad example because he's taking the hometown discount every year. The Tom Brady, the Aaron Rodgers, the whatever, right? Just Andrew Luck, just having the elite quarterback. Okay, we've got a guy who, with him alone, we will be contending every single year, so we pay him whatever it takes. So we've seen repeatedly that Andrew Luck is single-handedly capable of dragging whatever Colts roster you put around him to the postseason. Now, he's helped by the fact that that division doesn't tend to be great. So, but anyway, that's scenario number 2. Now you get down to, okay, now you've got the next tier, the tier you're talking about, the middle class. Now, they're good enough to win games. They're good enough to probably win a championship, but it's going to take more work. For them to win a championship, it's going to take a top-level roster around them. they're not going to be able to do what Andrew Luck is able to do in terms of dragging a crappy roster to the Super Bowl. You're going to need to put the 2013 Broncos defense around them. You're going to need to put an 2015. You're going to need to put an elite receiving core around them. They're going to need help to get there, but they can do it. So now those guys, teams need to start juggling the salary, because you can't really give them the Aaron Rodgers deal, because that restricts you too much from being able to put that championship caliber roster around them. What really needs to happen is those guys get signed to a deal that's good enough to acknowledge the fact that they're good quarterbacks, but doesn't hamstring you so much that those guys have no shot of ever winning because they need more help than everybody else. And then, tier 4 is just, you suck.
Tier 3 is big. I mean, honestly, tier 3 is a big chunk of the NFL. I mean, I would, just in basic terms, there's more tiers if you're really going to get granular with it. But we're talking about like Marcus Mariota and Jameis Winston are in there. Alex Smith, who you mentioned, is in there. Joe Flacco technically is in there, right? The guy Nick Foles is in there, right? All these guys, you're capable of winning with them, as you said. Just so much other stuff has to go right. I also believe in a given year, I've said this, I don't know if this is contradicting myself a little bit, but if you get all those pieces around them, all of these guys in any given year can be top 10 quarterbacks as far as output.
Look
right?
like it, yeah.
Right, as far as statistical output. So I always use Andy Dalton's 2015 season where he had A.J. Green, Marvin Jones, Mohamed Sanu, and healthy Tyler Eifert. And he was a top 10 statistical quarterback, top 5 before he got hurt.
Those ones will be reflected in grading. They will grade like top 10 quarterbacks. You just need to understand that it's being propelled by the surrounding cast.
But even
if you take that away, they won't have the same grade.
But even like 2013 Nick Foles, when he had 27 touchdowns, 2 interceptions,
right.
It was the best statistical season. Well, top 5 statistical season of all time, but he wasn't a top 10 quarterback in our grading because he had a great scheme.
The grading will take longer to get there.
Helping all that. So
because you still need to make the plays.
So you can build this perfect ecosystem around the guys. It's just more challenging. So yes, can you find this middle ground where, let's just say all the top quarterbacks are making $30 million a year. Let's say the top 10 guys get $30 million. Is there that next group that's in the 20s, right? Kirk Cousins, you got to make 20 to 22. Dak, you got to make 20 to 22. Can you keep those guys there? But because the NFL is so afraid of not having a quarterback, we'll never do that.
So this is the thing. It's because... So the NFL, the binary system is still there. We're still broken by the Alex Smith contract.
The NFL still living in that. We're trying to say, maybe don't. They
haven't yet moved to this idea of these are 2 dream scenario quarterbacks. There's the third tier is the tier that needs to be making less money than that. Otherwise, they can't win with those guys. And that's what it comes down to. If I can't win with a quarterback of that level making $30 million a year, I can't give him $30 million a year. Right. At that point, it becomes the better move to walk away from that guy rather than commit that kind of money to him. Now, Kirk Cousins was an interesting deal because that was a contract where they tried to do it differently. So they still gave him $28 million a year, which is same kind of ballpark. But they went, okay, we'll give it fully guaranteed, and we'll do it for 3 years.
Right.
So they said, instead of going to 30, instead of trying to break that barrier, which is where it's going, we're going to carve $3-4 million a year off that, and which we can use elsewhere,
and that's good for both,
right? And what we're going to give up, what we're going to give up by doing that, you essentially take less money than you could get. You're not going to get $30 million a year. You're going to get 28. You're not going to get 34, but we're going to give you it fully guaranteed and only for 3 years, which means you can hit the market again. So you get a shorter contract time, a longer term money, and you get fully guaranteed. And in exchange, we get a little bit more freedom to try and put a roster around you that means we can actually win with that kind of contract. I think that's the right, or at least a step in the right direction. Then we need more teams doing more things like that with that middle tier of quarterback.
I think the Derek Carr contract is a bit of a hybrid there as well. So Derek Carr this year, if he was to get cut this year, 2019, this is year 3 of his contract now, he's worth $22.5 million on the cap. Dead money would be $27.4 million this year. However, next year, cap number 21.5, then 22.125, then 19.877 in 2022. But the dead money, if you cut him in 2020, is only $5 million. So it's similar to the Cousins thing, and you're locked in for 3 years. You got to pay this guy. That's what Minnesota has with Cousins. That's what Oakland has with Derek Carr. But because you've got this mid-tier quarterback, it gives you the options to look elsewhere, right? You're able to look elsewhere. So the fact that if Kyler Murray fell to 4, Oakland could seriously consider him, have both quarterbacks on the roster in 2019, and then fully move to Kyler in 2020 and move on. And I think this is where NFL teams need to start weighing things now. So let's use Dak as an example. What is the percentage chance you can get another quarterback of Dak Prescott's caliber in the draft and save a boatload of money, right? But this is like I forget the exact specifics, but Eric's talked about it. Like, people have a bigger fear of losing than they have kind of the will to win. You have a bigger fear of losing Dak Prescott.
There's two ways of looking at the same equation, essentially, right? One, what is the percentage chance we can replace what Dak Prescott is bringing? And two, if we give Dak Prescott $30 million a year, $30 million plus, whatever it is, what are the percentage chances that we can actually put a requisite caliber roster around him with that amount of money sunk into it already? Because essentially those two things amount to the same problem, right? If I can't put the required roster around him to win at that cost, I'm better off moving on, whether I can replace that or not, because either way we're not winning.
Here's another way of looking at it, right? What is the competitive advantage that Dak Prescott brings you, just say in the NFC East, if you pay him $30 million? So just look at the quarterbacks in the NFC East.
Not.
Okay? So he's better than Eli. We'll say he's better than Eli and Daniel Jones in New York.
He's not better than Wentz. So already he's not winning.
Better than Wentz. We don't. So they're close. They're close to each other, but we don't think he's better than Wentz, especially not at that price.
Yes.
And then even with Washington, is he that big of a step up? Would you rather Haskins at cheap money?
Haskins at nothing money-wise versus Dak at $30 million a year? You're better off with Haskins at nothing.
Right. So to me, it's all about the competitive advantage. Now, I'm gonna completely say this. It's easy for us to say this in a vacuum. We're evaluating all 32 teams. It's not my job on the line, right?
You're really pitching for this NFL gig. You're taking.
Oh yeah, you guys would be criticizing
took the loss for the Bengals DC, and now you're aiming at front office.
Oh, if it was my money, I'd sit there. Andy Dalton is going to keep my job for 10 years. I am all in with Andy.
Right.
When I'm here at PFF headquarters, it's easy for me to say, we're trying to win games here. Mm-hmm. Who cares? Who cares if you have a couple 4-win seasons? I want Jameis Winston because he's going to win a championship for me 10 years down the road.
Yeah.
But I would take Mariota. I'd take the safe play.
You do the Raiders. You'd
job
be the Raiders
security.
draft.
Yeah, job security.
You do the Raiders draft.
Yeah.
I'm just going to take 3 safe guys in the first round.
Yeah.
That's all I'm looking for. Safety and character.
Yeah, I might change. But right now, where it's easy, and for us, the goal is just win games. Who cares if you have a 2-win season along the way? It's all about winning games and winning championships at the end. If you're truly looking at it from that viewpoint, it's very difficult to lock $30+ million into Dak Prescott.
So ultimately, all this, there's a lot of talk at the moment about analytics, which, by the way, I don't know if a lot of people understand what the word analytics even means. Like, the NFL teams have been doing analytics since they were receiving tape from opposition, which dates back to the 50s.
What do they do on 3rd and 7? They do this, and this.
Analytics
this percentage of the time.
Means looking at data to establish information, tendencies, right? And as long as teams have been looking at opposition tape to try and work out what they do in situations, they've been doing analytics. Now it's easier because there's more data and more information, and it's digital in a computer, and you don't have to spend your life making cut-ups on a reel-to-reel and sitting in a dark room. But it's the same concept, right? So, but the bottom line is, with all of this stuff, all you're doing is trying to get a competitive edge. It's not like if I look at this bank of numbers, I know something that's going to make me beat you 100% of the time because I know this and you don't, right? That's not the way it works.
Teams that use analytics only win 50% of the time, Sam. PFF customers only win 50% of the time.
Yeah. It's that I know this piece of information, therefore I've just stolen a couple of percentage points over you. Yeah. So you may be better than me, and all I've done is swung the thing back in my favor by 2%.
You just want to swing every variable in your favor.
But it's the 2% that's important. Yeah. It's that I have found a 2% edge in winning that you don't have. And every single team is trying to find a 2% here, 2% there, 2% there. But the point is, it only makes a difference if you actually play the numbers, right? Every single time. It's like, this gives me the better chance to win, so we do this. And if you don't do that, if you go, well, I need to make an exception here, well, then you're eroding the percentage point advantage that you've taken by the information. So with the Dak Prescott thing, it's like, okay, it's like going for a 4th down, right? It's not going to work out every single time, but the point is, if you do it every single time that way, play the math, because ultimately you'll be proved right long term. The Dak Prescott thing, you may end up in a situation where you go back to QB hell and it's going to suck. But if you'd taken Dak Prescott, paid him $30 million, you probably still wouldn't be winning the Super Bowl. You'd just be winning 10 games a year and look like you might. And you know what I mean? It's the same thing either way. It's just that one way you look a bit better than the other way. But you need to play the percentages, otherwise there's no point in any of this.
Yeah, we're assuming that you're trying to
win
maximize your chance of winning a Super Bowl.
If all you're looking for is to win 10 games a year and, put asses in the chair in Jerry World, that's different. Maybe then you take Dak Prescott.
Then you sign
better
Zeke.
Financial.
Then you sign Zeke because people like him more.
Zeke too. But if you're actually trying to win a championship, the move is to say you're not worth $30 million. Bye-bye.
Or, listen, I don't think it is binary if you do have a Derek Carr structure, because there is a scenario where you could pay Dak in the 20s for a little bit, and maybe you'll pay him in the 30s if he's 3 years down the road and he improves a little bit and he is a top 10 guy, because there's a chance any of these guys can get there. It's just a lower percentage.
The ultimate point is you want, and we want, to carve out some kind of structure for this middle-tier quarterback contract.
That's right.
Whether it's the Derek Carr scenario, whether it's a version of the Kirk Cousins deal. There were a couple other contracts. So I think Andy Dalton's
Dalton's looked bad at the time, but it's not
his
bad
can
at all.
essentially be viewed as that 1 year rolling contract where you're being paid $20 million a year as long as you're justifying $20 million. Colin Kaepernick's was like that when he signed his. It's like it's essentially a rolling starting caliber contract in terms of finance. Now maybe Dak Prescott.
Here's the tricky
maybe
part.
Maybe that's the thing.
Making it work, right? So the Daltons, the Kaepernicks, all those guys you mentioned, the Cousins. They need a better scenario around them. In other words, they probably need more investment. They need more O-line, receivers, all that stuff. At the same time, I would want to cheat on them and find the next Kyler, right? I would want to cheat on them. So it is tough, because if you have that chance to invest in that other guy versus investing for your quarterback, you just take that opportunity. If you think you can find a top 8 to 10 quarterback, no matter who's on your roster, you just take him, knowing that you might sacrifice some of the investment around the current starter.
Right.
So just being able to do that.
Well, at that point, the other variable of all that is if you're a tier 3 quarterback in this group of he can win, but he needs a hell of a lot of help, you should always be looking for a tier 1, because that's the dream scenario. So
no matter who you are, just keep doing that.
If you think you've got one of those guys, grab him, because then it doesn't matter that you need to put all this team around him. You've got the tier 1 guy, and that's the jackpot.
So there you have it. Put a bow on that.
Yeah.
Land that plane.
Yeah.
It's landed.
That's impressive corporate speak, Steve. You're going places.
Corporate BS generator is working hard over here. PFF headquarters. Okay, we spent most of the time on those two big topics.
So ultimately, bottom line, Dak Prescott not worth $30 million a year.
He's not. That's the bottom line. Let's fly through the last two.
He's also not as good as Matt Ryan.
It's true.